With us once again in Tucson, Arizona. Kelly, what more are we learning about that latest news about the DNA found on a glove a couple of miles from Nancy's house?
Well, the snapshot we are getting from investigators is that there's a lot of evidence that they've been dealing with, and a glove and other gloves have been talked about a lot publicly, and they have taken testing of those. They have established DNA profile, and then they've compared it against that database that you referred to, which includes persons all across the country who've been arrested or charged or convicted with a crime. There are differing laws state by state about when someone who's taken into custody must provide their DNA. But it is a vast database, and certainly if there were a criminal history, that would be a good way to identify a potential depositor of that DNA. Then, is it in some way linked to the Guthrie case? That's another big question. So work is being done. There are hundreds of investigators who are on this case working on a stream of different types of approaches. We know, for example, that they have been canvassing gun stores in the area. Why? Because the suspect seen on that doorbell video had a weapon, had a holster that had some interesting identifying markers that authorities are trying to get a better read on. Where was it purchased? What could they learn about that?
Breaking tonight. What just happened in a quiet neighborhood outside Tucson may be the biggest turning point yet in the disturbing disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Because for weeks the public has been hearing the same thing. No suspects. No arrests. Just thousands of leads. But according to sources connected to investigators, something dramatically different happened behind the scenes. And it didn't happen at a press conference. It happened during a sudden federal operation involving agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Vehicles arriving late at night, agents surrounding a location, and a property that suddenly became the center of one of the most intense investigations in the country. So the question everyone is asking right now is simple. Did investigators finally find the man behind the masked figure caught on the chilling doorbell camera? Because remember, that mysterious video showed someone walking toward Nancy Guthrie's home wearing gloves, a mask, and carrying a backpack. A figure who looked calm. Almost too calm. And investigators now believe that person may have made a mistake. A tiny clue. A clue that may finally connect dots in a case that has confused investigators, terrified neighbors, and triggered a nationwide search. But here's where the news gets even stranger. Because according to sources close to the investigation, what the FBI discovered during that raid may suggest something investigators feared from the beginning. That the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie might not have been random at all. And if that's true, then this case may be far darker than anyone originally imagined. Tonight we're breaking down the shocking developments, the clues investigators are quietly following, and the reason some experts now believe an arrest could be closer than anyone realizes. Because one thing is becoming very clear. The clock is ticking. And whoever is responsible may be running out of time. The quiet street where Nancy Guthrie lived was never supposed to become the center of a national mystery. Neighbors described the area as peaceful. The kind of place where people walk their dogs late at night, and the loudest thing you normally hear is a lawnmower on a Sunday morning. But everything changed the night Nancy Guthrie vanished. An 84-year-old grandmother disappears from her own bedroom. No broken windows. No forced entry. No signs of a struggle. Just an empty bed and a doorbell camera that stopped working minutes before someone appeared outside the house. For investigators, that detail immediately raised a chilling question. Was the camera disabled on purpose? Because when technicians later recovered fragments of video data from the system, they discovered something disturbing. A masked figure. A man standing on the porch of Nancy's home in the middle of the night. The video is grainy, black, and white, and lasts only seconds. But it was enough to make investigators from the Federal Bureau of Investigation sit up straight. The person in the footage isn't panicking. He isn't rushing. He's walking calmly, almost casually, like someone who knows exactly what he's about to do. The figure appears to be wearing a ski mask, gloves, dark clothing, and a backpack. At one point, he reaches toward the camera and blocks it. Just like that, the view disappears. And moments later, Nancy Guthrie is gone. At first, the investigation moved slowly.
I called this person the offender. the offender's behavior as he's walking around the porch prior to going inside the residence. He doesn't seem nervous. He's walking at a comfortable pace. He doesn't appear agitated. He appears to be actually relaxed. So I think that's really important when you put it into this perspective. He is about ready to go into a home where he doesn't belong and kidnap the person inside the home. And yet this is how relaxed that he is. So I think that tells us something about not only his personality, but it certainly could also suggest that this person is comfortable in that neighborhood and maybe even comfortable having been in the home before, because it helps to have minimized his risk.
Police searched the neighborhood. Volunteers walked through nearby desert areas. Helicopters scanned the skies. Hundreds of tips came pouring in. But the deeper investigators looked, the stranger the situation became. Because statistically speaking, when someone disappears from their home, investigators usually look first at the people closest to them: family members, friends, neighbors. So detectives began the difficult process of interviewing everyone in Nancy's inner circle. And that's when another surprising development happened. One by one, every person closest to Nancy Guthrie was cleared. No suspicious financial activity. No evidence of family disputes. No signs that anyone inside the home was involved, which meant investigators were suddenly facing a much more disturbing possibility. A stranger. A complete outsider who walked into a quiet neighborhood in the middle of the night and abducted an elderly woman without leaving obvious evidence behind. But then the investigation took a dramatic turn, because during an extended search of the surrounding area, authorities recovered something that might have been overlooked by anyone else. A single glove. It was found lying in a field roughly 2 miles from Nancy's house. At first glance, it looked ordinary. Just another piece of debris someone might have dropped on the side of the road. But detectives quickly noticed something interesting. The glove looked almost identical to the gloves worn by the masked figure in the doorbell footage. Suddenly, what looked like trash became potential evidence. The glove was immediately sent to a forensic lab, and what scientists discovered inside it made investigators lean forward in their chairs. DNA, not Nancy's, someone else's. An unknown male DNA profile. For a moment, detectives believed they had just caught a huge break. Because if the person responsible had a criminal history, that DNA could instantly match someone in the national database. The profile was uploaded into Combined DNA Index System, a massive system used by law enforcement agencies across the country. Millions of offender profiles. Millions of potential matches. Investigators waited. But when the results came back, they revealed something unexpected. No match. The DNA did not belong to anyone currently in the database, which meant the man connected to that glove had likely never been arrested for a qualifying crime before. To some people watching the case unfold online, that sounded like a dead end. But to experienced investigators, it meant something else entirely. It meant the suspect had just become far more interesting, because someone with no criminal history can often hide in plain sight. A normal job, a normal home, a normal life, and yet somehow connected to one of the most disturbing disappearances in recent memory. But the DNA wasn't the only clue investigators were following, because the masked figure in the video wasn't just wearing gloves. He was also carrying a very specific backpack. After reviewing the footage frame by frame, investigators believe the bag appears to be an Ozark Trail hiker backpack. And that detail opened a completely new door in the investigation, because that backpack is sold almost exclusively by one major retailer, Walmart, which meant detectives suddenly had something extremely valuable, a product trail. And if that backpack had been purchased recently inside a store, there was a very good chance that somewhere, on some security camera, the person who bought it had already been recorded. So while the public believed the investigation was going nowhere, behind the scenes, investigators were quietly building a profile. A masked man, average build, about 5'9" to 5'10", carrying a Walmart backpack, wearing gloves that left behind DNA, and moving through the night with a confidence that suggested he might have known more about Nancy Guthrie's home than anyone originally thought, which raises a terrifying possibility. What if the man in the mask wasn't just passing through the neighborhood? What if he had been there before? At first, the discovery of the glove seemed like the kind of break investigators dream about. But the deeper detectives dug into the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, the more the case started to look less like a random crime and more like a carefully planned operation. Because once investigators identified the backpack in the doorbell footage as an Ozark Trail hiker backpack, attention immediately shifted toward the one place most people never expect to become part of a criminal investigation: the checkout counter at Walmart. Behind the scenes, detectives began working directly with store management across Tucson. And what they were looking for wasn't just one purchase. They were looking for a pattern. Because the masked figure in the video wasn't carrying just a backpack. Investigators also noticed something else hanging from the suspect's waist: a holster, a cheap one. According to analysts who reviewed the footage frame by frame, the holster appears to be a Strategy brand hip holster, a low-cost accessory that sells for about $10. But here's the strange part. The holster is designed for a revolver, yet the weapon inside it appears to be a semi-automatic handgun. To firearm experts, that mismatch says something interesting about the person carrying it. He might not be experienced with guns. In other words, this may not have been a professional criminal, which makes the entire situation even more disturbing. Because if the suspect wasn't a professional, then how did he move through the night so calmly? Why did he look so comfortable standing outside the home of Nancy Guthrie? Those questions triggered a massive retail investigation. Detectives began combing through weeks of store surveillance footage. Every entrance camera, every checkout lane, every parking lot angle. And they weren't just searching for a backpack. They were searching for anyone buying a combination of items that matched the suspect's gear. A backpack, a holster, dark clothing, gloves. Individually, those items mean nothing. Together, they start to look like preparation.
I hope they get the suspect, because I'm not it. They better do their job and find the suspect that did it so they can clear my name, and I'm done. Look at what I'm putting my family through.
You're on
not
national news now.
Not just them, even my parents in Tucson.
Right.
Yeah.
But the retail trail wasn't the only thing narrowing the investigation. Because according to multiple reports, agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation had already begun something even more aggressive. They were walking into gun stores across the region. And they weren't asking general questions. They were carrying a list, roughly 40 names, 40 photographs. And they asked the same question in every store. Have you seen this person before? Think about what that means. Investigators didn't show up with a blurry image from a doorbell camera hoping someone might recognize it. They arrived with a group of specific individuals already identified through the investigation. People who had survived every filter so far: cell phone data, retail purchases, local tips, background checks. 40 people left standing. 40 possible connections to one of the strangest disappearances in recent memory. And according to sources close to the case, the number may already be shrinking. Because while detectives were reviewing surveillance footage and purchase records, something else was happening quietly behind the scenes. Federal agents were preparing search warrants. And that's when the case took another dramatic turn. Because late one evening, flashing lights suddenly appeared outside a home not far from where Nancy Guthrie lived. Neighbors watched as vehicles arrived. Agents stepped out. And within minutes, the quiet street had turned into the center of a federal operation. An operation connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. But the biggest question was still hanging in the air. What exactly had investigators discovered that made them move in so suddenly? And more importantly, who were they looking for inside that house? The night the agents moved in, the quiet community outside Tucson suddenly looked like the scene of a major federal operation. Neighbors say it started with unmarked vehicles, then more vehicles, then flashing lights. Within minutes, the area around the house was filled with officers connected to the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local authorities. People watched from their windows. Some stepped outside with phones in their hands. Because something about the way agents were moving made it clear this wasn't routine police activity. This was a raid, and it was connected to the mysterious disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Authorities surrounded the property while investigators began executing a search warrant. Inside, multiple individuals were reportedly detained and questioned. A vehicle parked nearby, a luxury Range Rover, was also towed away for forensic analysis. For neighbors who had been following the case, the sight was shocking. For weeks, investigators had been quiet. No arrests, no suspects publicly identified. But suddenly the investigation had exploded into action. And that raised a critical question. What did investigators know that the public didn't? According to sources familiar with the operation, detectives had been quietly building evidence from several different directions. The unknown male DNA recovered from the glove. The retail trail connected to the Ozark Trail hiker backpack. The list of potential suspects investigators had been showing to local gun stores. And perhaps most importantly, cell phone activity around Nancy's home on the night she vanished. Specialized teams from the FBI are known for analyzing massive amounts of cell tower data in cases like this. Every phone that connects to a tower leaves a digital footprint, a timestamp, a location, a movement pattern, which means investigators can reconstruct which devices were near a crime scene and where those devices traveled afterward. Imagine a map of the neighborhood the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared. Now imagine hundreds of tiny signals from cell phones lighting up across that map. Residents, drivers passing through, people asleep inside their homes. But somewhere among those signals might be a device that didn't belong there. A phone that appeared briefly near the house and then vanished into the night. That's the kind of clue investigators look for. And if one of those phones can be connected to someone already on the investigation's radar, the entire case could shift overnight. Meanwhile, forensic teams are continuing to analyze evidence recovered during the raid. Vehicles, personal items, digital devices. Every object has the potential to tell part of the news. But the most powerful piece of evidence may still be the DNA. Because investigators are now exploring a technique that has solved some of the most notorious cases in modern history. Genetic genealogy. This method allows investigators to compare crime scene DNA against large public genealogy databases to identify distant relatives. From there, analysts can build a family tree that eventually leads to one person. It's the same strategy that helped identify Joseph James DeAngelo, the man responsible for a decades-long crime spree across California. Which means the unknown DNA linked to the glove could eventually reveal a name. And when that name surfaces, investigators will already have something waiting. Phone records, purchase histories, surveillance footage, witness interviews, all of it ready to snap together like pieces of a puzzle. For now, authorities have not announced an arrest. But the sudden raid, the evidence being analyzed, and the aggressive pace of the investigation are sending a clear message. This case is no longer standing still. It's moving. And whoever is responsible for the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie may soon discover that the walls are closing in. Because in investigations like this, the suspect never knows which clue will expose them. The DNA, the purchase, the phone signal, or the one person who finally recognizes their face. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie has now turned into something far bigger than a simple missing person report. It has become a race against time. Investigators from the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local authorities in Tucson are now chasing thousands of clues, digital footprints, surveillance videos, purchase records, and that mysterious DNA profile that could eventually expose the person behind the mask. And here's the terrifying part. The person responsible might be watching all of this unfold right now. They might be seeing the headlines, hearing about the glove, hearing about the raid, hearing about investigators digging through store cameras, phone data, and family trees. And they might be realizing something investigators have already figured out. The mistake has already been made. Because in modern investigations, one tiny clue can destroy the perfect crime. A receipt, a camera frame, a cell phone signal, or a strand of DNA that eventually leads detectives directly to someone's front door. Which raises the biggest question of all. Who is the masked figure seen outside the home of Nancy Guthrie? Was it a stranger who randomly targeted the home? Or someone who knew exactly who was inside that house? And if investigators are right and the evidence is really starting to close in on one individual, then the next headline in this news could be the one everyone has been waiting for: an arrest. So what do you think really happened that night? Do you believe investigators are close to solving the mystery? Or is there still a shocking twist hiding somewhere in this case? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want to stay updated on every new development, every clue, and every breakthrough in this case, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because the next update on Nancy Guthrie might reveal the truth behind one of the most disturbing disappearances in recent memory.